What's up, everyone? I know many of you don't know who I am, but my name is Garland Harris Jr. I'm a residential designer and a real estate developer, and I'm doing a mini course today on how to read plans. Many of my clients have came to me asking me questions because they're trying to GC their own projects, and I've seen many of them make very costly mistakes just because they simply cannot read the plans that are associated with a construction project. So now I'm going to offer a course to help you guys understand the information that you need to build your first project. Yeah, so when you're building a plan, when you're building a house, there are various documents that you need that are very important to the construction of that project. So you have things like surveys. If you're subdividing property, you have plats. If you're building in flood zones, you have elevation certificates, you have civil drawings, you have architectural plans, you have structural drawings. If you're doing commercial projects, you have mechanical engineering and plumbing drawings. And if you're going to GC your own project, you need to have some kind of grasp on the information that is on these documents so that you can direct the team of subs in how to build the project efficiently and on time. I think HGTV and social media might have a lot of information out, a lot of misinformation out there that leads people to think that building a project is as simple as getting plans, going out, handing them to the subs, and voila, you ended up with a finished product. But I like to help people think about how a team has a coach and there are players. It's the coach's job to prepare the team for the game. When I played football in college, our coaches always had game plans from week to week. And what they would do is they would look at the team that we were playing, they would look at their strengths and weaknesses and then look at our strengths and weaknesses, and they would create a game plan to help us best be successful in that game. So when you're GCing a project, you're like a coach, and the subs are basically your players, and you have to direct and guide them in the ways that they can go. Because if you give the same set of plans to like three different GCs, they'll build the same house three different ways because they each have their own techniques, their own knowledge, and their own things. If you give subs a plan, sometimes they might not even read the plan. They're just going to build it the way that they know how, and they might not build it correctly per the plans. Oh, the site plan, building lines. So we had an issue on one of our current projects that we're building right now. I didn't check our form survey. So surveys are actually required literally throughout the building process. It's not just you go get a survey when you're buying the property. If you're going to do a replat, you're going to need another survey. If you're building in a flood zone, you're going to need another survey. When you start construction and you're laying out your form sets, the way the city knows that you have placed the houses in the correct location is you have a surveyor come out and do what is called a form survey. So when they came out and did the form survey on one of our projects, we were building four houses, and one of the houses, the slab was just a foot bigger than the other houses because it was a different floor plan. Well, when they laid out the forms, they actually set that form 6 inches too short. And we didn't catch it until after they had poured the concrete. And so now we have to take 6 inches out of that house because we didn't pay attention to the form survey, which had the house correctly behind the building line, but the house actually ended up being 6 inches shorter. So when you're looking at site plans, you want to pay attention to building lines because building lines can take away the buildable area that you have on a site. You might think you have a 5,000 square foot lot, but if it's sitting off of a major street and the city has a 25-foot building line, then you've already lost 25 feet of the property. So we had this one client. So whenever you're building a house like close to a property line, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll flush the overhang on the roof. And if you take the course, I'll explain to you what an overhang is. But anyway, we'll flush the overhang on the roof. And this guy, he didn't read the plans. He gave them to his framer. His framer didn't flush the overhang. It got until he had finished the house and was going for his final inspection. And the final inspector came out and was like, hey, this overhang is encroaching onto the lot next door. You're going to have to cut it back. And he looked at his plans, and the inspector pointed out to him it was supposed to be flushed anyway. And he was like, well, why didn't any of the other inspectors catch it? And he's like, because they're not looking for that. That's your job. And so he ended up having to spend, I think, like over 10 grand to basically come in. He had to rip all of the siding off in that area, and then he had to come back, cut the overhang back. They had to rebuild the fascia, they had to rebuild the shingles in that area. So they had to do all of that. And I think it delayed him like 2 weeks on his closing because he had to have all that done before the city gave him his final approval to even be able to sell the home, his certificate of compliance. So, that was a mistake that if he was paying attention to the plans, like, he comes out and when they're doing the framing and he's walking the job with the framers, he could have caught that a long time ago and told the framer during the framing stage, hey, we need to cut this back because it's supposed to be flushed over here. But because he didn't have a proper knowledge of how to read plans or even the proper knowledge of his own plans, he didn't know. So, like I can tell you examples. In one of our previous projects, our subs had actually built the front of the house wrong, and I caught it during the framing stage. I walked out on the site one day, and I was like, "Okay, look at whoa, wait a minute, what's going on over here, brother?" I talked to the GC, and the GC was like, "Oh, the sub says it's easier to build it this way," and I was like, "I don't care. That's not how we drew it. We want it built like this. Rip it down and rebuild it." And in that case, they had to rip it down at their own cost and rebuild it because they didn't do it per plan. Yeah, because if it's on the plans, then it's their mistake. Because if you have a GC, it's your GC's job to read the plans. So our GCs now, they know when they're working with me on a project, they know they better pay attention to the plans because they already know when I come out to the site, if it ain't done correctly per how we drew it up, then I'm going to make them change it and fix it per how we drew it up. Now that's for my own personal projects. Now for other clients, I'll come out and I'll point out something is wrong. And if they want to make the guys change it, a lot of times they're their own GC. So it's really on their cost to change it and they might not do it. But, I'll at least try to point out to them, hey, next time you're building, pay attention to this page because it tells you how the roof is supposed to be built, or pay attention to this page because it tells you the framing. You see this symbol here? That's what this means in this location or something like that. I think the misconception it really comes from our profession. There are a lot of guys who don't provide a lot of information on the plans. And so, some guys think that, oh, you don't have to really pay attention to the plans because they're probably not accurate. But there are a lot of us, in my practice, in my company, Mill Housing Design Co., I was trained by some of the largest builders in the country. All right. They build thousands of homes. Not they don't build two or three here or two or four there or something like that. I'm talking about these guys building 500-600 homes a year. And I took the practices that I learned from them and incorporated that in how I draw my plans. So the same level of detail and the same level of information that they have on their plans is the level that I have on mine. And a lot of it, like I tell most of my bill, my GCs, I've tried to figure out a lot of this stuff for you, like where the utilities are on the site, where how we're framing something out. We're going to try to figure most of that out for you so that we can take out a lot of the guesswork. Because for one, a lot of times we're going for a specific look. We're trying to achieve something, in the design that looks a certain way, because we're trying to create our own I guess you could say, brand our own style on these designs, on these houses that we're building and things that we're bringing to the neighborhoods that we're operating in. And so, we have to be specific in our plans. And so I would encourage anyone, it's important, especially I know there's some, it's not just me. I know some other guys, they're my competitors, but they're not really my competitors. We sit down and have lunch. We talk about our practices and things like that. They have skills that I don't and vice versa. And we talk about the level of detail that we put into our plans because we take pride in what we do. And so when you have people who take pride in what they do, you have a level of craftsmanship that comes into play that can be translated into the field. And I think that one of the misconceptions is that, you know, as design professionals, we just kind of push a button and boom, there's a plan there. But it is a lot more, or we just draw pretty pictures. But that's not the case. The design professionals, we're typically, even if we're not doing the structural engineering, we're working with the structural engineers. My engineers will tell you all the time, they'll call me and ask me questions, and we'll go back, or I'll call them and ask them questions like, hey, how do you want to tackle this? How do you want to frame this? Or how do you want to do this? So we're trying to figure out a lot, as much as we can, in the design and design phase before you guys get to construction, so that we could take the guesswork out of construction. So it's important to pay attention to the plans and don't believe that misconception that the plans are just vague. They're just go-bys. They're not something that really has enough information for you to correctly build the building. Anyone who thinks that they can GC a project but has never GC'd a project. And if you are a GC and you want to just understand better how to read a set of plans, maybe you feel like you're lacking in that area and you want to take yourself to the next level, or you want to learn also how to read like plats and surveys and things like that, because maybe you want to jump into development. We'll cover that in a section of the course. But yeah, basically anyone who wants to be a GC, I can't tell you how many times I get people who have renovated houses and then think they can make the jump from GC in a renovation of a house to GC in the new construction of a house, because they think, this should be much easier. It's not. There's much more that comes into play with building a home. And there's I've seen some projects where I can tell, like, oh man, they either didn't hire a good GC, or they didn't know what they were doing. And you're affecting the built environment of a neighborhood. I know some guys, they look at it as, I don't care what it looks like, I just want to put it out there and make the money off of it. But I care about what our neighborhoods look like. I build houses in the neighborhood I live in, and so I care about that, because I know that these homes or these buildings are going to stand in these neighborhoods for much longer than the money that you make off the project is going to last, because you'll probably go blow it immediately. But anyway, that's besides the point. And so if you are interested in GCing your own project, I want to be able to help you, give you the tools, so that I won't be able to help you figure everything out. Like, if you're like scheduling, all that is on you. You're gonna have to figure that out on your own, how you gonna schedule and work with material delivery and things like that. But at least at the bare minimum, I can show you where to look for the correct information, so that when you walk on the site, and you can tell if something is correct or not, and you can make sure that you're building a quality product. Because the last thing you want to do is be known as the crappy builder. Once you're known as the crappy builder, it sucks unless you got large public money behind you, like one national builder that I know, whose name I won't say, so I won't get sued. So I won't get sued for defamation. I ain't gonna say their name, but so yeah. Honestly, if you have no construction experience, if you've never built a house before in your life, if you've never looked at a set of plans in your life, you should not GC your own project. Hire somebody. I know what most people, I'm saving like 15, 20 grand, but you're not. It's a GC in a project is a job. You got to be there every day, and if you don't have that kind of time to commit to being on the site every day, to dealing with everything that goes into managing a project, because it's not just making sure that you got guys on site. You also got to make sure that you're protecting materials. So you got to know when to schedule and get materials out on the site. We just had on one of our projects, um, we had a delay with the inspector, and the inspector finally came, like, I think Tuesday, and approved the project. But then it starts pouring down raining for the next 3 days. Right? Today's Friday. Yeah, for the next 3 days. So my partner was asking our GCs, he was like, hey, how come we didn't have drywall on the site last week? And they had told him, oh, well, we was waiting on the inspector, we couldn't close anything up. And I was telling my partner, I was like, they probably just didn't want materials sitting on the site for longer than 24 hours, because we are in an area, well, pretty much anywhere you go, people are still construction materials. It doesn't matter where you at. Okay, you could be in the Woodlands, you could be in Hollywood Hills. If you got materials on your site and they're accessible, people will take it. Okay, doesn't matter where you are. All right. So managing that. So I felt like the GCs were doing a good job by basically saying, we're not going to order and have materials on site until we are ready to install them. And now we're behind a week because it rained and we can't get a delivery truck on the site because the site's all muddy. But these are things like, as a GC, you have to be able to pay attention to and understand how to, manage those timelines and things like that, because most people, what they would have done is they would have ordered their drywall last week, and then they would have been waiting on the inspector. And then they'd be like, okay, yeah, we'll be fine over the weekend. You come back Monday morning, all your drywall's gone. Somebody done broken your site, stole all your material. And it happens more often than you think. So if you're going to GC a project, you should at least have some kind of construction experience to begin with. But if not, man, hire somebody and form a partnership with them. Ask them, hey, I want to be a GC like you one day. So, help me learn this game. I'll pay you to build my project. Help me, understand like what you're doing and all these other things. And then if you are going to be a GC, one of the main things about GCs is you need relationships with suppliers and with subs. And if you're brand new, you don't have neither one. So you're not going to get the best pricing. So you might as well just go through the GC because they already got all the pricing. Yeah, so we're going to talk about, surveys, plats. We're going to talk about elevation certificates. We're going to talk about how to read them so that you can understand. We're also going to talk about when some of these things come into play. You only need an elevation certificate when you're building in a flood zone. You only need civil drawings if you're doing anything infrastructure related or you're doing anything in the flood zone. So now understanding these things, you can know, okay, I'm doing this project. All I need is an architectural professional and a structural engineer, and I'm good to go from there. And being able to, see things like understanding how to order your doors, understanding like window schedules. We'll talk about framing, and floor systems, and understanding like the benefits of using the pros and cons to using some of the different floor systems. Right now, a lot of us are using 2x12s and kind of incorporating steel into projects because we've been having a hard time getting engineered wood products, which is I joists, or sometimes known as trusses. I'm sorry, I joists, or what's the other term I think? Oh, BCIs is some of the terms that some of the builders call them. And then you have open web trusses. So these are different floor systems that you can use, and each one has its own benefits and its own cons. Some of them being cost. So we'll cover things like that. We'll also cover, you know, when you need certain engineers in a project. A lot of people will come to me and, we'll give them their permit set, and they'll be like, hey, where's my mechanical, electrical, and plumbing plans? And I'll be like, you don't need it. Just give these plans to the subs and they can build all of that out from there. And they'll be like, oh, I thought I needed that. One of my friends told me I needed it. And it was like, no, you really only need those things when you're building commercial projects. That's where you need those. So we'll talk about when those things are required and when they're not required. And we'll just basically, I'm gonna do some drawing on. We got a little fancy board. I'm gonna do some drawing. I'm gonna show you, different scenarios, and we'll talk about very unique things that you should be looking for on plans so that you can understand what you're building and communicate that to the people that are working under you. Gonna be 1 day, 3 hours. So three sections will be on Zoom. So it'll be a virtual course. So you don't got to come to Houston unless you want to. You know, you want to come visit Houston, just let a brother know. But it'll be Zoom. It'll be 3 hours. It'll be a Saturday morning, November 4th, I believe we picked November 4th, Saturday morning. And basically, you know, we'll break down. I'll get you in and out. You know, you'll be able to you'll have access to the PowerPoint after the course, so you'll have access to all of the information. And basically, man, I'm gonna give you the run through, and then we're gonna get you out there, and hope to see you out here building great projects.